Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now I have a question for you today. What's better than a 3 3/4 inch retro collection Adventures of Indiana Jones figure? Well, potentially the Gentle Giant 12-inch version, which is what I have here. And as you can see, it's pretty massive, and that's what we're going to be reviewing today. So let's take a look at the figure and see what it looks like. So if you've watched this channel for a while, you'll know that I've been really enjoying the retro collection figures from Hasbro Kenner. They're pretty good figures. They have their flaws, but as the original ones are so hard to find, I've been picking them up and doing a lot of customizing with them. And when I heard that Gentle Giant were going to do the jumbo version of the Indiana Jones figure, I had to grab it, and it has just arrived. So this is the 12-inch version of that retro collection figure. It's essentially the small figure scaled up to be 12 inches tall. It has the same sort of articulation, and it's supposed to just be a big version of that figure. And as you can see, it comes on this ginormous card. Now the card is a slightly modified version of the smaller card. I think if they scaled up the original sort of smaller card to this scale, it would be massive, and already this is a pretty massive and pretty weighty package. On the front you can see we have the figure here, which comes with two accessories. He's got his whip and his gun. His gun is actually in the holster on his leg, so I'm not sure if that can be removed. It does look like it can be. It's held in with an elastic band, so we will check that once we open the figure. And then on the front it just tells you that this is the Indiana Jones jumbo figure, which is poseable, movable at the neck, shoulders, hips and knees. I don't think it has the spring-loaded whip action that the small figure has. So this has one here, you can see it has the spring-loaded arm. I don't think this bigger version has that, but we will find out when we open it up. If we turn it over, you can see on the back there is information about other Gentle Giant products. There's no other figures in this line, it's just this one giant 12-inch figure, although there is another version of this which comes with the map room. For me, I just bought the basic figure. So what I really want to do is actually open this up and check it out in sort of greater detail, because I can see immediately looking in the packaging there's a few sort of little marks on him. I can see there's a slight chip on his finger there. In fact, there's quite a lot of marks on the packaging, so it's not the highest quality of things. I was expecting it to be a little bit better than this, certainly, and I can see things that possibly aren't as great as they should be. This cost me £70 or $69.99. The previous figures they've done for Star Wars have always been around that price range, but over time the prices do rise on some of those Star Wars figures, which is why I wanted to get this, because I'm sort of thinking that in a few years time this will actually go up in price. I think people will suddenly realise that they want it. Like all of the Indiana Jones sort of toys that they bring out, they're only available generally when the movies are about, and as soon as the movies disappear, so do all the figures, and that's when people start to realise that they should have bought them at the time. And I think that's what's going to happen with this. So what we need to do is actually open this up, and the packaging on this is designed so that you can open it up and then put it back in the packaging easily. It's just got some stickers around the edge of it, so there's some clear plastic stickers holding the back on. So if I undo all of these, we should be able to get the back off and get access to the figure. So let me do that, and then we'll take a look at him properly. So here is the figure out of the packaging, and I like the fact that the card is sort of so separate. You could just display this on its own, and it's made out of really nice thick card as well, so it's going to be pretty sturdy. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And the fact that you can actually take this figure out of the packaging, and if you want to put him back in at any point, you can easily do that. That's a really good thing. So let's get the Indy out of the rest of this packaging. There's just a few rubber bands to remove, and we'll take a look at him properly. Okay, so here we have Indy now out of the package, and actually just looking at him like this, I think he looks pretty cool, especially if you stand him next to a little original 3 3/4 inch figure. It's quite nice to see the scale difference of them, but I have to say, look, when you get close up to him, he really is pretty disappointing, and considering how much these cost, as I said, this was at £70, it really isn't made that well. I think these are designed basically to stay in the package and just to be a sort of an oddity that you have in your collection. As soon as you take them out, it is so obvious they are not very well made. So let's take a closer look at it, and I'll point you out the things that I just don't think are particularly good, and the things that really shouldn't be an issue when you're spending this much money on what essentially is a toy. I know it's really sort of a collectible, but to me this is still sold as a toy, so yeah, I think it should be a lot better than this. So let's take a closer look at it, and I'll show you what I think's wrong. Right, so it's when you get in closer, as I say, you can start to see the issues with it. Let me take off his whip. The whip is actually probably the least sort of bad thing of it. It's made out of some wool, or the whip part of it is made out of some wool, so it's got absolutely no sort of rigidity to it, so it just sort of hangs down. The little handle is actually better than the ones that came with the retro collection figures, because this does fit quite nicely in his hand. so he can actually hold the whip, which is a bit of a novelty. But when we come to the figure itself, this is where you start to see the flaws in it. The whole thing is painted, so even the legs are painted, the feet are painted, which means that any sort of minor sort of touching of it or scratching of it really leaves a mark. So actually, even just taking this out of the packet, you can see there are marks all over it. On the backs of his legs, you can see some of the paint has already started to wear away. On his groin here, we've got paint marks. On his hands, there's paint scuffs and paint marks. It really just doesn't seem that good quality. And where I've put this little whip in his hand already, just twice, you can see there are black marks forming on his hand. So overall, I just don't think it's made particularly well. You can see there's even a sort of chip there on the chin of his head. It just doesn't feel particularly good. Now we come to sort of trying to move him, and the figure is incredibly stiff to move. So just trying to move the arms, you can hear the noise it makes when I'm trying to rotate his arms, and that every time you're sort of moving it is scratching some of the paint. And that happens with both arms here, and actually when you get down to his legs it's even worse. The left leg you can just about move up a little bit, but it's designed in such a way that you can't actually move the leg more than that. The original figures, when you move them, you can see we can actually rotate his leg in all directions, but on these it's such a tight fit, that's as far as you can move it. And the knees as well, when you try and bend the knees, these are so stiff, and every time you're doing it you're scratching paint off. You can just see there's some yellow paint under there, and I can rotate this leg back about that far. On this one I can't even, oh, it feels like you're going to break it, so I can rotate about that far. And when I try to rotate it at the hip, basically that is as far as it will go. You cannot move that leg at all. It hits on the pelvis. So yeah, not very good design really, or not very good sort of upscaling of the figure. In fact, you can see there's quite a lot of paint damage there already just from trying to move that leg. So let's try and put his knee back down. That's not so bad. But yeah, it just really doesn't want to move. We can then rotate round to his gun. The holster has been changed. On the original figures, it's just a sort of clip, so the gun goes into a little clip there. On this larger figure, they've scaled it and changed it a bit so that the gun actually does fit into a holster. That is actually better because it does mean the gun is held in place. But if we take the gun out, again, you can see that the barrel of the gun has been bent. I don't know if we can bend that back, possibly can. I might have to do the same trick that I did on the smaller figures and put that into some hot water, but it's bent straight out of the packet. Let's try and put this in his hand. I have a feeling this will start to leave marks on his hand as well, so we'll just put that in gently. Oh, it does hold it, not too bad, at a bit of a jaunty angle, and because the gun barrel is bent, it does look a bit strange. Let's take a look at his face. As I showed you straight away, there is some chipping on his face, which is not great. Let me bend that arm down if I can. The overall look of the head is not too bad. Like the sort of retro collection versions, it's a little bit soft on the sculpt, but it doesn't look too bad. I'm not sort of too disappointed with how that's come out. We can just about rotate his head. Again, it gets stuck on the side, so you have a bit of trouble rotating it. Everything on this is just a bit too stiff and a bit too sort of close together. It doesn't feel like anybody's actually sort of tried to pose this in the sort of process of making the figure. They've sort of put it together and just gone, yeah, that will do, rather than actually sort of trying anything with it. Oh, I can see why there's a scratch on the side of his neck. It's this part of his shirt here is scratching the paint off his head. It's just really poorly put together, and considering this is £70, I don't know why they haven't put more effort into making it. You know, the overall effect of it, if you just stand it up as a figure, it does look pretty cool. It's just when you try and do anything with it, it just is so immediately obvious. It's just not a very good figure. It's just going to, everything you do is going to damage it in some way. So it's very disappointing. The sculpt on it, you know, isn't too bad. They have literally sort of digitized an original figure and scaled it up. So they've got things like the molding joints on the hands there, which I think are a bit exaggerated. If we look at an original figure, there are moulding joints on it, but they're nowhere near that sort of predominant, so they sort of emphasize those a bit. It just feels a little bit amateur to me, like they haven't put sort of much effort into it. I've actually got some toys that other people have scaled up, so they've taken scans of figures and then scaled them up and 3D printed them out, and those are so much nicer than this. This just feels, yeah, really like they haven't put any effort into it. Another area that seems sort of like it hasn't been put together quite properly are these knee joints. I've shown you that they are incredibly stiff to move, but the actual pegs that are going in either side to hold the knee in place don't look like they are fitted properly. You can see on this left knee, we've got this post which is sticking out really rather far, and I've tried to push it in but I can't. So I think that's just, again, a design flaw. The other knee is slightly better. Those posts have actually sort of pushed in pretty well. But on this one, it just seems like it's really stuck out a long way. But yeah, because the knee's stiff, I don't think I'm actually going to be able to pose this figure anyway. So possibly not a major issue, but it just looks a little bit ugly. So is this figure worth getting? I was really quite excited about getting this, and now it's turned up and I've taken it out of the packet. I sort of wish I hadn't. I wish I just left it in the packet. I'm not really a sort of packaged figure collector. I like to open things up and put them on my shelves. But often with modern toys, when you open up, that's when the disappointment starts. I know a lot of people haven't enjoyed the sort of Kenner retro collection figures, the smaller ones, because of the quality of them. But actually, I've got used to that, and I've sort of worked out ways to fix them and repair them and improve them. In fact, this figure here, you can see I've made my own whip and I've made my own bag for it. With this larger Gentle Giant version, I'm not quite sure what I can do with it. I can obviously straighten the gun and I can try and sort of fix up the things like the knees, but the fact that every part of it, as soon as you move it or as soon as you touch it, the paint sort of scuffs and marks, you basically can't pose him much because his arms are so stiff, the legs don't bend particularly well, the knees are so stiff. Everything about it just sort of says to me I should have left it in the packet, which is not something I want to do. And for £70, I was expecting this to be quite a nice figure, and it really isn't. It's a very disappointing toy. So yeah, I don't know really what to say at this point, because normally I try to put a positive spin on all the stuff that I review, because basically toys are fun and toys should be fun. But with something like this, it's just a massive disappointment. I'm going to put it back in the packet and I'll try and enjoy it in the packet. I'll just put it with the rest of my Indiana Jones figures for display. But I was really hoping for something more, something that I could actually sort of pose a bit and take some funny photos with and just generally mess about with. But this thing is so hard to pose and it's so sort of delicate on the paint job. The amount of marks I put on it just doing this review are crazy. So I'm going to have to get the lighter fluid out and see if I can remove some of the marks from the paint. It's just a really disappointing toy. Gentle Giant, you need to pull your fingers out and do better on these sorts of things. These are designed for collectors to sort of enjoy, and you know, I have to say I am not enjoying this. It is a massive disappointment. So hopefully, you know, Gentle Giant will hear this and maybe they'll try and do a bit better in future, because at the moment this is not great and I really wouldn't suggest any of you bother buying it. It's just not worth it. So yeah, sorry to sort of end this on a downer, but yeah, I just don't like this figure. It's just not great. I was really excited to get this, and now I've opened it, I'm really quite disappointed. So hopefully my review of this figure has been of interest to you. If it has, then make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell to be notified each time I upload a new video. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Toy-Polloi. Subscribe for more great videos.